Hi, everyone. My name is Eleni, and I'm the COO at Base Beauty Creative Agency. And I'm so excited to welcome you all to today's Masterclass, How to Avoid Tone-Deaf Marketing on Social Media. So today's class is going to be led by Becca, our social media director, and I will introduce her in just a second. But before we get started, I just wanted to let you all know that this is going to be a bite-sized 30-ish minute event today. And you are welcomed and encouraged to ask questions throughout. There's a question and answer feature on the bottom that you can chat your questions into. And at the end, we'll probably have time for some questions. And if we don't get time to answer all of them, we'll also be sending out a follow-up email where you can reach out to us directly and we can chat with you. And the best question will be the winner of a giveaway of some Base Beauty swag, so some incentive to be engaged in the conversation. So I'm going to introduce Becca and then turn it over to her. So a Southern California native, Rebecca attended Utah State University and graduated with a degree in journalism and communications. After a stint in North Carolina where she worked at a startup hair care brand, Rebecca moved to New York and joined Base Beauty Creative Agency. She enjoys combining compelling copy with captivating images to tell unique brand stories on social media, all while trying to crack the code on ever-changing social platform algorithms. And in her spare time, she likes to escape the city to hike, write, and discover charming coffee shops. So Becca, I will turn it over to you.
Thank you so much, Eleni. Hi, everybody. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and we'll get started. Thank you for joining today. So we're going to be talking about how to avoid tone-deaf marketing during times of crisis. So really focusing on how to avoid that kind of cringeworthy content that I'm sure many of us saw and we're trying to avoid over the past several months. It's been a bit of a roller coaster. So 2020 really has been a particularly hard year for social media marketers in a world that's really been shut down for the most part from in-person contact. People have had to turn to social more than ever, which has really put things under a microscope. You know, social media is always so incredibly visible, and it's only become more so in light of COVID and, you know, the many other things that have happened this year. Not to mention the fact that leadership on teams and at brands have really been challenged with evaluating their brand values. This has really challenged people in a lot of different ways and how those values are communicated to the audience, both internally and externally. So just a quick snapshot of kind of all of the things that have happened this year. It's been pretty wild. These are just a handful of the many kind of roller coaster items that have gone on. January 20th, it's crazy to think that we're already in July, but January 20th was the first recorded case of COVID in the US. Then you jump all the way to July and we have, Twitter hacking going on and Facebook boycotts, and not to mention the ongoing Black Lives Matter movement and continuing concerns with COVID that really have continued to create an ever-changing landscape. So as marketers, this can make things a little bit scary. There's sort of this feeling of nothing you're going to do is going to be right and it won't be perfect. And that's okay. But, all we can do is do our best. And so I wanted to show some of these screenshots. These are some different comments from real users, real followers of a brand with a lot of different sentiment and a lot of different messages. So if we, look through these things, there's just a lot of different feelings going on. And I think the scariest thing here is that all of these comments are on the same post. So it really ran the gamut. And this was pretty common. There were a lot of different feelings going on over the past several months. And, people are upset, they're scared, they're looking for guidance. And so this was really the chance for brands to step in and share their values with people. So why does it matter that people are scared and that all of these issues are going on? 75% of people are likely to start shopping with a company that supports what they agree with. So when people buy their products or services, they view these buying decisions as an actual extension of their beliefs, and they really want to support companies that share those values. So it really behooves marketers and brands altogether to share what their values are. I think we all know that we'll never please everyone, but being able to connect with your audience and those that share your values on a real deep level is so important and will create a lot of customer loyalty. So that being said, I have a few tips, in this kind of crazy world that we can go through as we're creating content and developing campaigns in times of crisis and in times of uncertainty that will kind of help guide us. And again, we'll never get it perfect, but these things will really help to get it as good as we can. So number one is be informed. Pretty straightforward. And keep in mind that there is no business as usual right now. Lush Cosmetics released a great statement of this, and I think it was just such an incredible example and just very straightforward, and I think they're so right. So it's really important as you're creating your content and as things are going on to not ignore current events. You really need to be aware to avoid coming off as tone deaf or kind of out of touch with your audience. So do your research. Really simple, read the news, set up Google alerts, be monitoring for micro trends. Social listening during these times as well should go into overdrive. Whatever social listening you're normally doing, you can safely say that it needs to increase anytime there's a crisis situation going on. And then when it comes to your audience, you really want to ask questions. You want to gain those insights from them. So, ask questions to your audience and ask questions to yourself. What can we do? How can we help? What will actually make this better? And how can I directly affect my audience in a positive way? And I included these two examples here of kind of what I would consider cringeworthy content. We have a post by Kristen Cavalieri that went live in March. So really amid, I would say some, in a way, widespread panic about the pandemic. This was really very much in the beginning. And she released this sort of urgent message asking people to please read and talking about how important her content was. And it was about lifestyle and styling outfits and things, and just really came off very tone deaf. She got a lot of backlash over this. And recently, Kim Kardashian's post about her Frisian horses, and again, this came off very tone deaf in a time when Black Lives Matter movement is really continuing to heat up and to help create change, and also when a lot of Americans are really suffering from an economic downturn. So this came off very tone deaf to many of her followers as well. So my second tip is to really consider your audience, and this is to consider them in a way that you may not have been considering them previously. So some things to think about: location, demographic, lifestyle, income, and values. And these are really important when you're creating this content because, for example, when we look at COVID and the way that the country shut down, different states were shutting down at different rates and also reopening at different rates. So the location of your followers is really important. The demographic and who they are, what they like, this is important as well. We talked about values already. And then, lifestyle, what are they out doing? If your target customer is probably not, the outdoorsy type going out hiking or, camping, you probably wouldn't want to include content like that. You really want to be thinking about what they like, what they're doing, and how to appeal to them. So one brand that did a great job of this is I Am Well and Good. They just did an excellent job of curbing their content, really considering their audience when they were creating content during this crisis. I think they always do a great job of this, but they really have just been shining lately, in my opinion. So, it's really important to not just consider where your audience is and who they are, but also to have sensitivity to the world around you. I noticed I was working for the past several months in Charlotte, and I was living a very different life than I was living when I was in the city. I had a backyard, I had a lot of outdoor space that I could still be very socially distanced and safe and quarantined with my family. But that was a very different world than what someone who was maybe living in the heavily affected metropolitan areas like San Francisco or New York City was experiencing. So I had to be really careful creating content not to inject my own experience and forget that many of the followers on a lot of our brands are based in those big city areas that have been really heavily affected. So some other ways that you can consider your audiences, is to poll your audience. I always suggest using stories for this. There are so many great tools on there, and you're able to really interact with people one-on-one and find out what they want and what they're looking for. So that's a really great tool. And to always act with compassion and consider the fact that, in these uncertain times and during times of crisis, people are scared and they might be angry or they might be disappointed. And for community managers and social media managers to act accordingly and keep that in mind as you're responding to things or creating that content that, everyone is feeling a certain way. So a few other examples of what I thought were shining stars when we're talking about considering your audience. Glossier did a great job addressing their audience on a global level, knowing that they would be wondering, what was going on with their stores. They were some of the front runners coming out and presenting a statement on what they would be doing in light of COVID. Another example from Well and Good. I love this. The gym in my town is opening up, but is it actually safe to go? Like I said, many places have been opening up at different speeds. So this was, I think, a great touch on their part. And this is an excellent example from the Honey Pot. They knew that their customers were upset that they've been out of stock due to different assembly line problems affected by COVID. And they just came out and just went ahead and said it. And I think that was really great that they did that. My third tip is to reevaluate. So I think that as marketers, many times we get really attached to our content and our campaigns and our calendars, and it's so hard and kind of heartbreaking sometimes to, have to totally change that, particularly when, there are some scary things happening in the world. And, we want to maybe continue with business as usual, but it's just not the way to go if you want to connect with your audience on a meaningful level. So a lot of times this means going back and taking the extra time to reevaluate your content. And I can say from experience that this can be very, very time consuming, but it's absolutely worth taking the time and going into overdrive during these times. So read, reread, and reread again, get multiple eyes on that content that you've created and are now reevaluating. And really consider all angles. Like I said, we do get very attached. So it's important to be flexible about making changes and just to think about the fact that during times of crisis or during times of extreme uncertainty, things that may have been had a certain connotation before may now have a totally different connotation. So for example, the screenshot over here shows the face mask hashtag on Instagram. 6 months ago, this was full of more, beauty related things, like, mask and relax and people wearing sheet masks and doing different skincare routines. And now, as we can see, this is very, very different. We're seeing people wearing masks to, stay safe and keep others safe for COVID. So that's just one example of many that could be, taken very differently. And, here we kind of broke down some different things that could be definitely taken in a really off-putting way, given a different time. So, a sentence like breathe easy, knowing that your products are free of sulfates, parabens, and phthalates could very easily kind of stir up by, talking about breathing easy, some issues when we're talking about, COVID and also I can't breathe. It's suddenly has a completely different meaning. Same with saying something about being confident, knowing that your skin is safe and protected. That's something that you would possibly want to reconsider if that were a caption that you had written, particularly when people may not feel safe or protected simply leaving their house. The fourth tip I have here is to be authentic. And this is probably my favorite one and sort of my guiding philosophy for social media as a whole. But when it comes to crisis management and, planning content in a way that's, not going to come off tone deaf and is going to really stay on the mark during these times, authenticity is even more important than ever. So don't jump on the bandwagon. On Blackout Tuesday, which was June 2nd, we saw millions of posts go live from influencers and brands and individuals posting in solidarity with the Black Lives Matter movement and muting themselves to make space for Black voices. And many of those, I guess you could say, were bandwagon. A lot of people said nothing afterwards and didn't really change their content, or, perhaps came out with statements saying what they were going to do, but never followed up. So it's really easy, I think, for people to want to get involved, but not do anything afterwards. This is where we also run into performative allyship, which I'll just kind of glaze over, although it's an extremely important topic that I encourage everyone to look into more if you are not familiar with it, but with our limited time, but just the fact that even when you're trying to do the right thing during these times, it is very easy to fall into performative allyship, which is kind of that self-serving allyship. So just a couple of things that you can do is to make sure that you're keeping the focus on the issue and not about you or about the brand. And continually educating yourself is key. So not capitalizing on situations and always trying to make sure that you are an ally as a verb. So that you're allying and not as a noun. I think that's a really important kind of rule of thumb to keep in mind. If you're wondering, am I being a performative ally right now? Ask yourself if you're taking action or if you're, simply speaking about a topic. So one example that I loved here was a headband brand that came out with these face masks. It was really original. And with the goal of helping people. So they're absolutely still selling their products. They're being good marketers. They're, doing great branding, but they also are being very aware of what's going on and really serving their audience rather than just jumping on the bandwagon and saying, we're selling masks. They found a new way to do it and a way to actually connect that with their values and be really authentic about it. A couple other brands that did, I think, a great job. Lush Cosmetics came out and they said, we're an ethical company. This is who we are. And we believe that we should have done something sooner and we should have acted differently. And that taking of ownership, I think, really allowed their customers to connect with them and continue to show their values. Girls Night In Club took a little bit different approach. This was towards the beginning of quarantine when many of us had just started working from home, and they have a lot of humor and I would say, kind of sarcasm injected in their feeds. And so they managed to remain authentic to that and to who they are, but also provide this resource for their followers. And then Alta MD, who's actually one of our clients, they were able to make a donation to an organization that supports Black dermatologists, rather than just kind of jumping on the bandwagon and choosing one of the many amazing organizations that a lot of people donated to. They really felt that it was important to find an organization that strongly aligned with their values and was in a space that they could make real change. And that was just so authentic for them, and I think had a really great impact, and they've continued to work with them since. My fifth tip is to support your network. So recently, one of the biggest things I've noticed here with making sure that we find creative ways to support our network was with the Facebook boycott. So the Stop Hate for Profit campaign, I imagine for many of you, threw a huge wrench in plans for July, where many brands went ahead and pulled their marketing dollars from Facebook and Instagram advertising, and also many stopped doing organic posts. So this is fine and, great to make a statement about, what these brands believe in. But my question is, what about the little guys? These partners that many brands work with and that we, create these campaigns with, rely on these revenue streams. And particularly in a time like this, when things are, times are really tough, we may be trying to put financial pressure on a large corporation like Facebook, but the people who are actually getting the most hurt are our brand partners, our experts, and our creators. So, it's really important to think about that and to say, okay, how can we work with these creators in another way? So, for example, we were running a campaign with some of our clients, and we were able to kind of think creatively and say, where else can we find these creators and these experts, and what are some other creative ways that they can make content for this campaign to maintain these contracts and maintain these relationships with these people that we've created. So we were able to utilize TikTok, email blasts. A lot of creators have large email lists that you can utilize, as well as YouTube following. So there are a lot of different channels to always remember besides, the big powerhouses like Facebook and Instagram. My last tip is to take action. So going back to these black squares for Blackout Tuesday, like I said, millions of people were posting about this. And yet I think after the fact, we didn't see a whole lot of follow-up along the way. And although many brands have, I would say, just as many, if not more, individuals and brands just didn't really take much action afterwards. So you don't just talk the talk, you really need to walk the walk. Make sure that you follow through. So if you're like Lush Cosmetics and you come out and say, these are the things that we're going to do, you really need to hold yourself accountable. And if you want to go a step further, tell your audience how you will hold yourself accountable. This is a great way to connect with them. If you say you're going to make a donation, do it. If you'll say you'll be supporting Black creatives, do it. If you say that you value your employees, you need to act in a way that shows them that you care. And I think this is a great point to state that racial inequality is not a marketing problem to solve. Any of these things, any of these values that we have really need to be fully integrated into an organization. And these values should, permeate in its entirety. For example, with Black Lives Matter, it's a movement that's asking corporations at all levels to make positive change. So it can't just be something for the social media or the marketing team to address. Companies like Lush Cosmetics really did a great job of explaining to their customers how they were going to do that and integrate this into their organization as a whole. Another excellent example that I found was Supergoop. They actually broke down and listed each of the things that they would be doing, these actionable items, which I think were really great on all the different ways that they were going to make change and continue to do things and to take action for their customers and, for the different movements. And they just did a really great job. So what are the next steps? What can you do right now to make sure that your content's not missing the mark and that you aren't creating tone-deaf marketing? So one of the first things that you can do is to really focus on getting some different eyeballs on your content and on your campaigns. So asking people on your team of different backgrounds, different lifestyles, who live in different regions, to review your content. They may see it in a different way, and it can really help you see things from a different angle and a different lens. I also love the idea of gathering your team, much like we're gathering now, for a live brainstorming session via Zoom at Base Beauty. We love doing this and find that it's extremely productive, and we always get great ideas out of this, and being able to speak with people in real time, which can be challenging right now, is just so valuable. Also do the research. You need to stay informed, monitor situations on a daily basis. When things are changing so quickly, it's really not enough to just, check every couple of days. You've got to be on top of it. So setting Google alerts can really help. And, assigning news monitoring to a team member or having different team members monitor different situations, and then relaying that important information to everyone else can be a huge help as well. And lastly, you might want to perform a social media and marketing audit. This is something that we do at Base Beauty, but anyone can, you can look at your own content as well and really say, okay, getting the eyeballs on there and saying, what are we doing? How are we doing this? And what do we need to change? And those are all of my tips. I really ran through those quickly. This is such an important topic, and so I could have probably talked for an hour and a half, but I'd love to hear any questions.
Thank you, Becca. That was amazing. And I'm receiving really amazing feedback on how actionable these items are. So thanks for breaking that down in those really clear steps. Yes. So I think we have just a few minutes left. So I'll just give you 3 questions. The first one, as a community manager, I feel so nervous that I'm going to be responsible for a potential controversy for my brand. How can I navigate the enormous responsibility of this time period when I'm obviously not the CEO?
Oh my gosh, that is such a great question. And I'm totally relating to that. This is something that we've been dealing with a lot lately, obviously. And this question has come up quite a bit. I think one of the biggest things is gathering your team around you and being able to have, other eyes. If you're able to, have someone as a sounding board to bounce these things off of, it does feel like, and it is an immense responsibility as a community manager, particularly during times of crisis, to have to create these responses. So I know that, internally at Base, we have multiple people that we will talk to about these really challenging community management responses. And just knowing that it will take a little bit more time and being able to commit to that. And then, at a certain level, sometimes it has to be escalated. And I think that is an important thing to recognize as well. And maybe even to talk to your team about internally, that there are times where you may have to get the CEO involved, where you're speaking on behalf of the brand on something really important and knowing what those limits are. So speaking with your team ahead of time and trying to kind of anticipate potential questions or controversy and knowing what your standpoint is on it can be really helpful, and knowing where the line is of, hey, do we escalate this or do I just give a response? I think lastly, something that can be very helpful is just having a PR team behind you as well. If that's something that you have access to, PR people really specialize in this and knowing how to address really controversial problems. So that can be hugely helpful as well.
Mm-hmm. Great. Okay, the next question. As a small startup brand, should I get involved in the big conversations?
So this is definitely, different for every brand, and it's a brand decision. But in my personal opinion, yes, I think the answer is a resounding yes, especially actually if you're a small startup brand. That is your opportunity to connect with people on a deep level. If you're new, they don't know you yet. You want to create those really deep, meaningful relationships with your audience and with your potential customers and with your current customers, and really get to know them and let them get to know you on a really authentic level. And I think that can help you create some real loyalty and a truly effective and involved audience on social media.
Great. Okay, and then the last question. If I don't have a huge network of contacts in the beauty industry to poll, how can I get different eyeballs on my content? Where should I start?
That's a great question. I'll say, for us, there were actually a few times over the past 6 months that I reached out to people that were not in the beauty industry at all, and asked for their opinion on some things. And, particularly with crisis, or these crazy times of uncertainty, it's not necessarily pertaining to beauty altogether, right? Coronavirus is something that's affecting everyone. Black Lives Matter affects everyone. So your viewpoint and your lens allows you to see it through the beauty industry. But, talk to your friends, talk to the people in your professional network, whether, they're in education or tech or they're in beauty, they can all have a really great viewpoint. And again, getting really anyone that has a different lens to look at your content and to help get different eyes on something can be super helpful. So they do not have to be in beauty. Also, you can always reach out to us as well. We have a really great team that's very, has diverse viewpoints and is able to look at that stuff as well.
Great. Becca, thank you so much. This has been incredible. To everyone who is registered and who has attended, we will be sending out a recording and the slides from this presentation. And if you have any follow-up questions for Becca, you can find us on email or on social media. So thanks everyone for coming. And thank you, Becca, and have a great day.
Thank you so much, everybody. Have a great day.